That's how everything is. Trying to get the iPad to balance on something.
Hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Elected Libertarian panel. Let's get some hype in here. Come on, Elected Libertarians, holy crap! We win elections. What? Yeah, we win elections and they're here. In case you don't know me, I'm Morgen Mogus. I'm the chair of the Libertarian Party of Butler County. Welcome to my county. I hope you're enjoying your time here. Yeah, that's right. I'm also the chair of the Elections Committee, and I'm looking forward to working with our county leaders and candidates to ensure a successful 2025 cycle. Now, the goal of this panel is to be an educational resource for people who might be thinking to themselves, you know, every year, at least every other year, I get these letters from the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania asking to run for mayor, supervisor, or for my borough council, but I'd like to learn more about it first. I'm hoping to tackle all the questions a prospective candidate might have and to hear experiences directly from Libertarians serving in local office and what can be done at the local level. Before we begin, I have a question for the audience here. Show of hands, how many of you were at the 2024 National Libertarian Convention? Show of hands. All right, a few of you. Okay, cool, perfect, thank you. In case you weren't there, there was a gentleman there who gave a speech, and his name was Vivek Ramaswamy. Maybe you've heard of him. He was a pharma guy, wrote a couple books about the culture war, ran for president with the wrong party. Anywho, this panel, I was thinking about what the talk that he gave at National, and his premise was this, and I'll be quoting him directly here. What is your goal? Is it to get 3% as a stretch goal, which would be a great outcome, and to call that a victory and move on? Or is it to actually take the freedom-centric ideals those of us in this room share deeply in common and to actually translate that into action? Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. Now, when he says translate that into action, of course we know he's referring to working with Trump. Now, I understand where he and a lot of my Republican friends, especially here in Butler County when I'm out on the road doing stuff for the Libertarian Party, I understand where they're all coming from when they suggest things like this. And yes, you're going to have to work with people you disagree with to get the things you want. That's just how the game works. However, there's a huge problem with this premise that you can't really ignore, especially if you care a lot about local elections like I do. And the fatal flaw in that way of thinking is it implies that the only offices that matter are federal offices, mainly the presidency. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. The offices that matter the most are local offices, and you can thank the 10th Amendment for that. The way libertarians put ideas into action is winning, enacting policy, and becoming leaders at the local level. The gentlemen up here with me tonight, and libertarians across local offices all across Pennsylvania, are the ones that make the dream happen. And without further ado, let's introduce our elected libertarians. I'll start with you first, Chris, and then we can work our way down. So tell us a little about yourself, the office you've been elected to, and the community you serve.
So for those that don't know me, my name is Chris Logan. I'm the vice chair of Butler County. And I guess while I have the mic, I'd like to thank Morgan for all the good work he does.
Oh, thank you, Chris. It's not about me.
So about 3 years ago, I was elected to Connoquenessing Borough Council, and I did 3 years as just a regular council member, and last month I was promoted or failed upwards, I don't know, into council president. So, so it's a small borough here in western PA, about 10 minutes from here, and I was telling these guys, it's when I moved in, I would open my back door and I saw cows. Now I see 2 stories. So I really had to get on council because I saw tax increases coming, that sort of thing, and wanted to fight it because, you know, we have our old little community that's Main Street and then the riffraff that's moving in, I guess.
I'm Benjamin Seevers. I grew up in North Apollo, Pennsylvania. It is a small town, about 50 minutes away from Pittsburgh. It has a population of 1,400. I took office in 2022, and I resigned near the end of 2023 to pursue grad school. So it's a small town. It's in Armstrong County. If you've ever been there, it's a a rural area outside of near Butler. It's like to the east of Butler. So yeah, everyone knows where Butler is now. So everyone can imagine that location that. So yeah, but I went to Grove City College and I graduated from there in 2023, and now I'm here today. So.
I'm Pete Schwarze.
It's off.
I'm Pete Schwarze. Thank you. I am currently an auditor with Jefferson Township in Berks County. I have to actually tell you it's in Berks County because there's 3 Jefferson Townships throughout the state of Pennsylvania. We're the smallest one. I live in a township where the cows outnumber the people. I can say this for a fact because I know the 2 largest dairy farmers, and they have over 1,000 head each. And the population in Jefferson Township is 2,000. I actually got elected as an auditor in 2019. I got solicited from the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania to run on a Moulton maneuver. And guess what I discovered on the day of the election? It was no Moulton maneuver. I had an opponent, and it happened to be a Democrat who was 30 years incumbent in that office. So it was a lot of shaking hands, and there were also there was no Republican on the ballot. The Republicans really hated the Democrats that year, and that kind of helped propel me. About 3 years ago, I was elected to serve at least a 1-year term for suspension of a term for Jefferson Township Supervisor. So I had a year on the Township Supervisors, got defeated the following year, and got voted back on to the Auditors. And I too now am chairman of the Auditors. So sometimes a Libertarian winds up getting elected by Republicans and Democrats on the same board.
Hello, I'm Alex Bentrim, councilman for New Britain Borough, Pennsylvania. It's not a big borough, but saw that there was an opening to run for the council and was able to run a write-in campaign, which it's not that easy, but there was a lot of people who would ask me which party that I belonged to, and I could tell they were really asking me, like, are you the bad party? And I was able to tell all of them, like, hey, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican, I'm not the other team, so we can still be friends. Got a lot of votes that way.
That's awesome. So what made you...
Alex, you say not a big borough, but it's over 3,000 people.
This is true. It is worth mentioning the borough that Alex is elected to is 3,000 people. So that's quite an accomplishment.
Bigger than all of ours combined.
So what made you decide to run for local office? And did you have a particular office in mind when you did run?
Starting with me?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll do the same order.
Yeah, okay. I got hit up with a Moulton maneuver 3 or 4 years ago, whatever it was, because I just registered as Libertarian. I think that was when COVID kicked off, and I realized everybody sucked on it except for Libertarians. That's when I started getting into it. What was the other part of the question?
Did you have a particular office in mind when you decided to run?
Okay, so the Moulton maneuver letter came through, and there was several listed, and I did a little bit of research, and I picked just regular council because I wanted to get my feet wet a little bit, and also you had a voting position there, so I could hopefully do something to make a difference. Yeah, so that's why I went for just a standard council seat, not mayor. I don't know how other boroughs work, but ours is a little goofy. The mayor only votes for tiebreakers, so I was like, I don't want to do that because I wanted to have a say. And after a couple years, I got bumped up to president because people quit and or died, but that's a different story.
For me, we were hot off Drew's campaign for state representative in Armstrong County, and I was looking for something to start. We were excited. We were looking for something to do, and North Apollo, we thought about that. I considered school board at first, but if you want to burn everything down, school board's probably not the best place to start. So the borough allows you to abolish a lot more. So that's why I decided to go for borough. You can get rid of pretty much everything at that level. So that's what excited me. I was excited for the implementing the ideas to improving people's welfare in the borough, and I thought that the people would be receptive to that, generally receptive. Maybe not privatizing roads, but I thought that I could get away with some stuff. But when I got into it, though, I realized, wow, people aren't really the people in the council at least aren't really receptive to this, but the people in the town are when you explain it and defend it and so on. So that just kind of galvanized me further and led me to go for borough rather than school board and so
Nice.
Does that answer everything?
Yeah.
Well, I was actually asked to run as far as auditor goes. But for township supervisor, I always I always have said that the township supervisor in a second-class township is probably the most powerful political position in America. Because, number one, there's only 3 of you. So you've got literally 1/3 of the whole legislative body. And you're also in the executive branch. So I got on to township supervisor, and I thought, this is great. I got some real pull here. And soon found out, actually you don't, because you're the Libertarian. So now if you want to bring 2 Republicans who hate each other together real quick, be the Libertarian on the board. They become very friendly all of a sudden. And as far as the executive branch in second-class township, you're the one that gets the phone call to get the chicken that ran across the fence back out of Mrs. Smith's yard and back into Mrs. Jones's yard.
I did want to run for borough council, saw that there was an opening and thought it'd be a good opportunity to get in there. And so now, instead of the whole borough being just Democrats, there's one Libertarian. And so, and the reason for doing so, I guess, would be righteous indignation.
Here, here. Everyone always tells me Libertarians don't win elections. What did you guys do on your campaigns to win?
So I was a Molten maneuver, and everybody knows what that is, right? Yeah, okay. So it was basically uncontested. So I didn't have to do a whole lot to win other than get some signatures, which for me was 14, I think. So it wasn't very hard, but I'm coming up here, I'm gonna run for re-election, and there will be others on the ballot. And so far the plan is to, I'm real friendly with everybody in the neighborhood, and I walk up and down the street, talk to people, say hi, hang out at the post office, let them know who I am. Maybe do some door knocking a little bit, but I'm really not worried about it coming up for this year, because I am kind of close to the whole community. I work from home, take walks at lunch, talk to people up and down the street, and that's pretty much my strategy to make sure I'm reelected. And at this point, I'm pretty sure that there's only going to be one other person on the ballot that I know of, who's my neighbor, who will also do a great job. So yeah, I'm not too worried about it, Morgan.
Don't worry, I'll keep an eye on it.
In our town, 1,400, you can knock all those doors. It's doable. You can knock, and you should. Like, if you're running in a small town like that, you have no excuse not to. Back in 2000, 2002, there was a state representative candidate in my town, a friend of mine, and he ended up ousting a incumbent Republican in the primaries. What he did was he knocked every door in his district, which is a lot more than 1,400 people. So even the larger races, a 3,000 person town, 5,000 person town, it's very doable. You should do it. That's what we did. Have a presence online, live stream the meetings, do it before you even take office. You can, that's your right. People tried to strong arm us not to do that, threatened to sue us, but no, Sunshine Act, you can do that. So live stream the meetings, post them on Facebook, and comment about it. Talk about what happened, talk about what went wrong, what should be changed. and keep people informed, be useful, because not everyone's going to these meetings. It's a few old people. That's who's going to these meetings. No offense. But it's a few old people going to these meetings, and it's in group, and that's it. And nobody knows what's going on. It's unfortunate, but your tax money's getting burnt. So keep people informed. So be useful. That'd be my advice. That's what we did.
In my township, 300 to 350 votes is enough to win. So what I did to get elected the first time, I shook a lot of hands and I kept my mouth shut as much as possible. You have to keep in mind, when you're running for a local race, it doesn't matter where you stand on the income tax, the Fed. It doesn't matter where you stand on the wars or defend the guard. What does matter is where you might stand on a sign ordinance, or barking dogs, or again, a border dispute between two neighbors. That's what they're going to care about. And when you're running for the office, that's what you know the least about, because it doesn't make the 6 o'clock news. So yeah, shake a lot of hands, listen, and try not to talk too much.
That is the opposite of every politician ever.
I did a lot of knocking on doors, shaking hands, speaking to people. Most people were kind of just polite and either no thank you or give me a quick minute. But some people really, really engage and talk with you for 20-some minutes, which makes it difficult to get to as many houses as you wanted. But a lot of that, I would see those people at the polling place and like, hey, I remember you. You got my vote. It's like, all right, count on that one. And I think the biggest thing that put me over was doing a write-in campaign. We had a brilliant idea to get a bunch of pens with my name on it, write in Alex Bentrim. And so at the polling station, I was able to ask people to vote for me, and here's how to actually spell my name properly. And other than that, I showed up at the polling place at like 5:45 in the morning. So I was able to get the spot right before they go in. So I had the last table after they went by the Republicans and the Democrats. And the Democrats didn't quite see me coming. And so throughout the day, them kind of gauging and seeing what was happening and the success I was getting, by the end of the day, half of the council had shown up to help kind of the Democrat there. The mayor shows up and they're all sitting there and kind of getting in the way of my table, but I just politely stood there afterwards, and the last person that people would speak to before going in would be me.
That's awesome. That is absolutely incredible. So a question that I sometimes get when I try recruiting candidates is how much of a time commitment is serving in local office, and how do you balance it with your life outside of politics?
So I'm in a real small borough, and I'm curious to hear what the other answers are. But for me, as a regular council member, it was a couple hours per week, 2, maybe 3, reviewing stuff, getting ready for the meetings coming up, make sure you understand the issues, preparing any questions. After I became the council president, now it's, I would say, 8 to 10 hours a week, because I get involved with more stuff as far as the financials go. Basically, I sign a lot of checks. And you have to look at all that stuff, make sure it's all right before you put your name on it, that sort of thing. I get calls about the engineer has an issue with this, that, or the other thing. Can you meet with them? That's kind of a time sink. Sewage issues, a pump broke. Hey, we need to talk to you. Can we do this? That sort of thing. But yeah, so I'd say right now, as the president, 8 to 10 hours a week.
And so for a regular council member, it's like, you say 4 to 8 or
3 hours a week,
3 hours a
maybe,
week.
roughly. I mean, of course, there's times when it's a lot of work, and then there's,
right, yeah.
there's weeks when nothing happens.
There's spikes in activity.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so president probably a lot more work, but just a regular councilman in North Apollo, at least, there's the regular meeting each month, and there's an occasional special meeting. So a lot of activity around the regular meeting, and I'm trying to balance that in school, so I'm traveling as well, back and forth. So I guess adding that, probably 10 hours or more a month. A busy month would be 10 to 20. I don't think I ever got to 20, but like, you know, you're writing ordinances, you're calling people, you're talking to people, and then there's the meeting where a lot of activity is clustered around. So, but you know, when you call someone's baby ugly, you're probably not going to get called by that person again. And you know, when you call their babies ugly, when you call the councilman's babies ugly, they're not going to want to talk to you. So you know, I was calling their babies ugly. I was calling their ordinances ugly. I was taking them through I was throwing them in the wood chipper, the ordinances that is, yeah, they just didn't like that. So I don't think if you're going to do that, they're probably not going to want to cooperate with you and talk with you and so on. So yeah, that will bring your time down.
As an auditor, the way the system works now for small towns, they have an accounting department, an accounting firm that basically audits the books. All you do is sign off on it. So an auditor basically meets once a year. We have this ongoing bet going on that how short can we make our meeting for one meeting a year? Usually it's somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes. But as a supervisor, yeah, it's a lot more of a time commitment. But again, it has certain spikes, and especially working as a libertarian, because sometimes you have to get creative. My first big hot button issue when I was a supervisor was there was a church wanting to build on some farmland. The neighbors didn't like that. As a matter of fact, I couldn't understand why the neighbors didn't like a church who wanted also to put a cemetery in. I'm like, you can't get a quieter neighbor. And they were insisting they wanted me to vote, because I was actually going to be the deciding vote. They wanted me to vote to outlaw churches from coming into the township. And I'm like, you know, there's such a thing as a First Amendment right. I don't think I can do that. But they had wetland on that property. So I had to do a little research, and I did some homework, and I basically told the neighbors, I said, I'm going to convince them not to build there. And I said, you can't do that. The only thing that's going to do that is the government forcing them not to do that. I'm like, no, they will be perfectly happy not to build there. So I called the Berks County Conservancy Office, which is basically your county equivalent of the EPA or DER. And they said, well, if they got wetlands there, they're going to have to do a bog turtle study. Bog turtle studies start at $250,000, and they can go up to $800,000. And I'm like, really? Okay. How long does a bog turtle study take? Over 2 years. Because you have to have 2 mating seasons. So here we were sitting in an open township meeting, and I said, are you guys aware that you're going to jack the price of your new church up by $800,000 before you even consult with an engineer? And they're like, why? I said, well, you got to do a bog turtle study. I said, I found that out from the County Conservancy Office. They're going to require this. One old guy said to me, he said, we'll do our own turtle study. I said, hey, do all the turtle studies you want, but the only one that's going to count is the one you pay $800,000 for. They moved it to another place.
I would say the minimum time requirements of the council meetings are about 2 to 3 hours once a month, but then maybe every other month or so there's an executive meeting beforehand, which is usually about an hour, and then going over the packet for the meetings and learning everything, that taking another half hour or so. And so that's kind of the floor, but then getting involved with the different committees and trying to get events going. And well, like I was in the 4th of July parade, but that was kind of fun. But so I would say 4 or 5 hours a month would be sort of the floor, but can get up to 8 to 10.
So on the council, what are some of the local initiatives that you've led while you were in office, and how does it feel, as we've mentioned before, being the sole libertarian voice in your government? How do you navigate that?
So I guess my main mission coming in was no new taxes. So far, that's still, oh, no, that's not entirely true. We did raise the fire tax a little bit, but the community, everybody I talked to really wanted it. But yeah, keeping taxes low was like my main thing. And once I kind of got comfortable a little bit, I said, let's try some like lead decrim stuff. And I went in there with something probably Larry Fine gave me, I don't remember. But
Shout out Larry.
shout out Larry. And it was terrible. Everybody hated it. The Republicans were like, well, I don't like it, so nobody should do it. I don't want a mechanic that's been smoking weed working on my car. And I'm like, bad news, they're already doing that, so who cares? They didn't buy it. And then the Democrat, the guy that still to this day wears 2 masks, said that if the federal government thinks it's a bad idea, I think it's a bad idea. So how does it feel being the only libertarian? Not good. But it is entertaining at times.
I sympathize with that. It is very entertaining to be the only libertarian. But I did mention that I record meetings, and I noted to Morgen that when he was setting up the phone on the side of the container over there to live stream this, that's how every meeting started, trying to get the iPad to balance on something so that the meeting could be live streamed to Facebook. But yeah, that's one thing we did, because they hated it, because they didn't like people watching what they were doing. And if you're going to do this, you have to record, live stream, make sure you're getting what's going on out there. We did other things, like I tried to pass an ordinance that would have allowed the police to arrest the postal workers for sending our mail back, because there's criminals handling the mail in our post office. I don't mean like literal criminals, like they're violating one of the laws, but they're it's a monopoly, and like the town, we had a conflict with the postal service, and they kept just sending our mail back despite like our addresses being written on the mail, and this postmaster was just a jerk, to be frank, and he was very zealous, and he just kept getting our mail sent back. So I tried to pass this ordinance, and we actually voted to advertise this ordinance, which I was so surprised that we were going to do. But then the next meeting, this was after I resigned, and someone came back and like talked to the council not to vote for it, but then it died. So, but yeah, that's one exciting initiative. I tried to privatize trash collection. So there's a conflict over, like everyone wants one, waste management, or shank trash disposal. So like, you know, we're trying to reconcile this difference. One person wants one thing, another person wants another. Like, maybe we should allow people to choose. And I understand there's, yeah. But the idea was, allow people to choose which trash company they get, instead of the government just imposing one on everyone. And I understand there's cost arguments. Now, if one trash company can't take care of the whole town, perhaps they wouldn't be as willing to provide trash in that town. But there's such thing as mergers and agreements and contracts and so on. They can find, the market finds a way to do this thing, and many boroughs already do this. So if you have a contract system for your various services in your municipality, privatization, kicking it to the households to choose, that would be an excellent thing for you to try. And trash is one thing you could do. Yeah, that's probably the biggest one that can be privatized.
When I first went on as supervisors, I wanted to also lower the taxes. They really never got the conversation around to lowering the taxes. But to give you guys probably the most contentious we had, one supervisor, I guess, got tired of hearing his neighbor's dog bark, so he put in a dog barking ordinance. First words out of my mouth is, "What's next, crying kids?" Sometimes you want a dog to bark. Somebody's breaking in. I said, I just can't support this. And we went back and forth with it like all year long. And I think the final vote came, it was my last, after I had been defeated, my last Township Supervisors meeting, and I said, you know what, I cannot support something like this. A dog is an independent animal, and yes, you train your dog, but if the dog's barking, you shouldn't be giving a $75 fine out to the owner because the dog decided to bark. So that was probably the most contentious.
Was there any public backlash from that?
Probably not, because most of the time what they do is they put this on a website. Most of the public doesn't look at the website.
Mm-hmm.
The only time a fine is going to come down is if somebody puts in a complaint. So if half the township doesn't even know that there's an ordinance, they're not gonna go putting the complaint in, and the word's not gonna get out. So what's gonna happen is somebody is going to be like, anybody who ever used to watch Bewitched, you have Mrs. Kravitz across the street with the telescope. Yeah, as soon as you have somebody who's up on it and decides they have a neighbor they don't want, that's when it's gonna be contentious. And the disgusting thing about the way politics is in small town America is these people are basically going to 3 or 4 years after the ordinance is enacted, say, when did they do that? When did that happen? What the heck? And you know, it's gonna be something that's so far after the fact that they're gonna be really strung out over it, and so because they weren't paying attention when it happened.
It definitely can feel like an uphill battle at times, but we don't do these things because they're easy. And my council, I'm the youngest person by 30 some years, so I can just outlast them all. But yeah, the biggest thing is being the lone no vote on a lot of the things that they want to. And I get the impression that for years, if not decades, it was just everybody all on the same page, no opposition at all. And so a lot of it is trying to stop them from doing things that they should not be doing.
Very good.
I'm no longer the only no vote sometimes.
Oh, nice. You're making progress. You're getting through. So a candidate might say, okay, I'm interested in running, but I'm not very familiar with what happens in local government. What sort of issues can I expect to come up in local politics? I know there's departments, municipal commissions, and contractors, but how does that all work?
So I guess I'll go through maybe like a typical meeting, how we would deal with that. So we go through all of our normal business, and then there's committees that handle all the individual things. And a lot of stuff that comes up is gonna be like basic housekeeping type stuff. Mrs. Smith reported that there's a pothole and she's real mad about it. Now we gotta deal with that. I think I mentioned before, a lot of conversations with the engineer. Like, we're doing work on the playground at the little Boro park. So there's a lot of conversations about that. That's some of the stuff we deal with. And to be honest, none of the stuff gets too heavy into politics. And I've been trying to tell people that, at least in my borough, at the local level, politics just doesn't seem to matter. Because, you know, I guess it's because Democrats, Republicans, they don't tend to be principled at all whatsoever. They just vote however they feel at the time without much thought going into it. So we really don't get into too much political discussion. It's really a lot of nuts and bolts housekeeping type stuff. I guess one big one that came up was snow removal. Our entire budget's about $150,000 a year. 40,000 of it was snow removal. Well, a new development went in, it snowed. They weren't happy with the snow removal when they came in with a list of demands, so we revised the contract, or we revised the bid for the contract, sent it out. The people that have been doing it for 20 years didn't even bother to submit a quote. The next closest one put us at like $80,000 a year for a $150,000 budget. So that's the kind of thing we get into where there's a lot of heated discussion, but yeah, sometimes it gets heated, but usually it's not too bad. There's not too many arguments. Everybody gets along for the most part.
Now, when you say send it out, do you mean you're sending bid requests to local, I guess, contractors to remove the snow, or how does that process work?
Okay, yeah, good question. So the way it works is, if you know something's gonna be over like $10,000 or $12,000, whatever the number is, you need a minimum of 3 quotes, or you at least have to document that you're really trying to get at least 3 quotes. And when we sent it out the first time, we got no responses. So we're coming up into October and we have no snow removal whatsoever. So people really started getting anxious about that. And what we ended up doing was calling local paving companies, and finally got 3 to respond. They were all pretty close together. But yeah, whatever the dollars per mile was basically twice what we had before.
So there's a number of things that I could say One is, if you have an opportunity to get out of a contract or fire someone, take it. Like, any excuse to do that, take it. If an employee is like a nuisance, a public employee that is, take that far, get rid of them. We have one example of police contracting. We contract out police to a local township, Kiski Township. They provide police services to us, and all of the police officers mass resigned one day, and so they were not able to fulfill their end of the contract, and so we stopped paying them. We're like, well, you're not providing us with police, so we cut the funding. Then eventually we had the moment to decide whether or not to resume payments or not, and the council ended up going with resuming the payments. So I would have preferred to just not resume them. Like, look, you've already violated the contract, we're getting out of it. But you got to push for this stuff. Use these as opportunities to push for liberty, push for smaller government, privatizing things, because at that point the public will be more or less behind you. They'll be pretty fired up too when all the police resign. So yeah, petty drama, monotonous issues, stuff like that. Many things come up: chickens, cats, dogs, whatever have you. Yeah.
If you don't know what's going on in your borough or township, the best thing I can tell you before you decide to run for office, go to the meetings. Go to the meetings, sit in the back of the room, ask questions, and be the pain in the ass in the room. You really know you're making progress when you start going to a meeting and they start asking you the question, what are you doing here? And, of course, I always used to love to say, I'm just here to see what I can learn. And you start asking questions and make them uncomfortable, then you're going to be able to have a platform for yourself for when you run.
As was mentioned, there's a lot of dealing with, the trash companies, and snow removal's a big one that's very expensive for small boroughs. But some of the more fun things are when a developer comes and they're interested in a plot of land, but say it's industrial and they need it rezoned for residential or commercial or a mixture of the two, and being able to work with them and get some development coming into the area and get some money out of that, rather than having to raise taxes on everybody. So that's probably the most fun, is when there's a financial win for the borough instead of more taxes.
Absolutely. Now, someone might hear all that and go, okay, what can I do in local office to advance liberty? Each municipality has different structures. Some might be standard rule or home charter. They might be different classes of township. How does that sort of affect what I'm able to do? So what can I do at the local level to advance liberty?
So Pete gave, I'm looking at my phone here at my notes, and Pete basically gave my answer for this one already. But the important thing is to show up. Show up at the meetings. Ask good questions. We have a guy that shows up to pretty much every meeting. He must have run a contracting business. So when stuff comes up with like, how does this quote work? How does that work? Are we doing this right? He just looks at it and goes like, sometimes, that is a ridiculous amount of money. You got to change this. And he's usually almost always right. So yeah, so saving us money, that's a great way to do it. And he's not elected, none of that. He just shows up.
Local doge.
Local doge.
Yeah, local doge, I like that. So I think that's one really great way to do it. And if you are elected, I think these guys pointed out, just be the pain in the ass. No, we're not doing that. That's dumb. And I got a story coming up in a little bit that'll put that in context.
That's a good one.
So boroughs typically have, mine had 5 councilmen on it, and so if you wanted to pass, there was a quorum of 3. So if 3 people show up at the meeting, the meeting processes, and a 2 majority will be able to pass bills and take various actions. So be aware of that. I remember when I resigned, someone else was also resigning, and we were approving someone to come on the board, and there were only 3 of us at the meeting, and I voted against this person to be confirmed. I'm like, see, I gotcha. Then he walked up and sat down next to me. I'm like, what? so like, I just wasn't familiar with that rule, and it like took me off guard. And so yeah, like 2 people can control these meetings. 3 people show up. The majority's 2, and so yeah, 2 people can control it. In a borough, a mayor has veto power, so that requires 4 out of 5 people, at least in our context, to override it. So if you live in a contentious borough, like 2 people, 3 people, 2 people on one side in the council, 3 people on the other, and they're always opposed to each other, you can probably make a lot of ground by being the mayor that just vetoes everything and causing them to like have to reconvene at a special meeting or next month, delaying their actions. And this can be done with most things are done, contracts, ordinances, and everything. So, and you can even do that. I think it's within 30 days you can veto something. So, if you get on council and something happened 30 days prior, you could veto it, or assuming the mayor hasn't already done something regarding it and it was already override. I think also as a councilman, as a new council coming in, you have the right to review certain actions that were taken within a certain time frame before you take office. So you can recall these votes and like try to walk back on stuff that the previous council did. So there's stuff that you can do like that. Yeah, just keep being a pain in the ass. That's the point.
One of the things that everyone needs to keep in mind is the one who is the closest to taking your freedom isn't the federal government. Oh, the federal government can make life expensive for you. The state can make life miserable for you. But the one who's really the closest to your home that can really hurt your freedom is your local government. They're the ones that actually will tell you, you gotta take that sign down, you gotta move your mailbox, you gotta, and if you don't, we can fine you. We had one instance where there were people who basically turned their yard into a junkyard. And the neighbors had a valid complaint because they really turned their yard into a junkyard. The township started fining them, and it got up to $1,000 a day. And I don't care what the value of your property is, but pretty soon it's going to get to the point where your house is underwater. So that's not done by the federal government. That's not done by the state government. That's done by the local government. And they're the ones that are closest to taking away your freedom.
One of the most effective ways that you can help advance liberty is speaking with your neighbors and letting them know what is going on, what ordinance is coming up, and especially if you can get them to come to a meeting. Most meetings, there's literally nobody there. And so if you can have just one voice of opposition from the public coming, that can go really far, a long way with helping to stop a lot of the crap they want to do.
Right on. So, okay, libertarians can pass pro-liberty ordinances. Big deal. Just how bad can things really be, right? What's the most absurd law your community has tried to pass? Surely, local government can't be as bad as state or federal government, right?
I assure you they can. So right after I got elected, this was maybe my first or second meeting, I don't remember, but an issue came up. We're in the development, I'm on Main Street, it's like the old part of town, and there's the new development. Something went wrong with a sewer pipe, so they had to come in and tear it up, and in the process of that, they had to tear up someone's fence because they put a fence over the sewer line, and now there's a fight. Who has to repair the fence? The homeowner, the sewer people, nobody knows, it's a problem. They're trying to sort it out, I have no idea what the hell's going on. And neither did the mayor. But that didn't stop him from saying, I think we should just put an ordinance in the books that says no fences, problem solved.
Anywhere, ever?
Yeah, it was, that's the one I was like, all right, this is insane, we're not doing that. So that was probably the dumbest one I could think of.
And it's also worth mentioning that there are state laws that require fences around public pools. So I don't know what he would have, if he even passed that, they would be on it immediately.
And I shouldn't make him sound like he's an unreasonable guy, but he floated the idea, and what concerned me was everybody else was like, maybe it might work. No.
have a very similar one. You just made me think about this, but I have another one. There was a problem with a tree falling on someone's property, and there was all this debate about it. And one of the councilmen was like, "If I had my way, I'd chop down every damn tree on this town." And yeah, and he was serious. He was kind of serious because like the tree that fell down, I believe, was a borough-owned tree. So he wanted to chop down every tree that was in like the public right of way. I think it was somewhat of a tenuous argument he was making, but it is in the same vein. I remember this was like right off when I first started. There was a grant that was being debated, and part of the grant was the condition of the grant was essentially if you sign on to this, the federal government can change any condition in this grant at will. What? It was in the wording, right? It was like right there. And not only was it it wasn't just free money. It was like you had to match how much they gave. So it was like $60,000, and then you had to match that, and they would give that, and then you got into this terrible agreement. Where I think it was also the state too. Like the federal and state government could just change the conditions at whim. And I brought this up, and then it was shot down. So it actually worked. And then the county, like their mind like exploded, and they sent a representative to the next meeting, and they basically talked the other councilmen probably before the meeting even started to vote for it, and they had their minds made up, and yeah, they reconsidered the grant and they voted for it. They literally did not explain why they changed their mind. They just said, oh yeah, we're supporting this now, and it's like, what is going on? Am I crazy? And everyone hates me because I'm the guy that voted against it, but like. All the other people, 4 other people on the board, also voted against it last month, and I'm the only one giving reasons why I believe what I do. It's kind of absurd. If you feel like what's that Kafka book when he's on trial and he doesn't know what he's on trial for? Like that.
Yeah.
Like he has to defend, and like he doesn't know what he's on trial for, and you feel like that every meeting. So yeah, that was pretty absurd.
It's funny you mentioned a grant. And how bad can it be? They had, as a result of the stimulus package from COVID, they had grants that were given for general use, however you wanted to deal with it as a municipality, to all the municipalities in our county. What we did with the grant money was we actually put a restroom at the local park. What I heard other surrounding townships doing, you would find criminal. Normal pay for a second-class township supervisor is about $130 to $150 a month. Now, keep that figure sunk in. And these were $80,000 grants. Surrounding townships to us, the supervisors in those townships decided to divide the grant 3 ways and take a bonus.
Whoa, what?
That's not criminal?
I'm going to say it should be, but yeah, it's the craziest thing you ever heard of. So how would they explain to an auditor that you're making $150 a month, but this year we had a really good year. We took back $25,000 in bonus money. But that's what happened. If you wonder on what happened with the stimulus grants from COVID, that's some of what happened. They gave out $80,000 grants to each of your local townships and boroughs. And the moral thing to do is put it to use in the community if you're going to use it at all. But yeah, some of these guys went and took bonuses. And it was more than one community. And I was actually proud of my township because that was not discussed at all. Even the other 2 guys, it was like, we're gonna well, first off, you have to understand, this park didn't have a restroom. It had porta potties. So for years, people had this dream that maybe we could actually get a restroom on the site. And, where all the soccer kids, baseball kids would at least have some place other than a porta potty. And so they were looking forward to that for years, and we're thankful they didn't have to tap the taxpayer for it. But yeah, some of the surrounding townships, they just, forget that. I'm taking a check home.
So grants. A lot of people think that grants are, and there are some grants where it's literally just, hey, you get the money, here's free money, and it's really nice. Most grants are matching grants, and so you are obligating yourself to provide the funding, and then once you do that, then you can get reimbursed. My former borough manager, she apparently did not know that, and so financially devastated us by applying for tons of grants that ended up being matching grants. And so there's a big hole to dig out with that. And then ordinances. Next to us in New Britain, Township next to us is Doylestown, and also very liberal, run by Democrats. And so they're very happy to virtue signal with ordinances like plastic bag bans, things like that. And so when that happens, then my council's like, oh, we want to be good neighbors and do the same. And so a plastic bag ban really is actually just the plastic bags with the handles to leave the grocery store, none of the plastic inside the store and produce and your meats and cheeses, your vegetables, still plastic everywhere. But they get to signal how progressive they are, and they look at it as just a benefit and look at the good reputation we're getting. And I don't think any of them ever had anybody except me explain there's also a detriment to that of people looking at us wasting time and resources to get nothing actually done. For example, we don't have any puppy mills in my borough, but we banned puppy mills. And so to be clear, we didn't ban, you can still buy a puppy at a puppy mill if you want, like there's no way to stop you to do that. But just no puppy mills are allowed to come in and set up camp now. So the problem that did not exist still doesn't exist. But they get to pretend that they solved something. And it's difficult to explain to them that normal people look at that like you're wasting resources and time and not accomplishing what you actually should be doing.
Did they actually give a reason for that, or were you able to dig one up?
Just kind of bleeding hearts. We love the puppies and we don't want puppy mills to exist. And so my question was, why not have the ordinance ban the puppy? It did not make sense. and I love dogs. I adopted my puppy. You know, didn't get him from a mill, but it's nonsense like that where we have things like snow removal that we can be using our resources and time and attention on.
May I add something?
Sure, yeah.
You reminded me of something that I would regret if I didn't bring it up. Alligator ban. So there was for an entire summer gator mania in the whole area where I was councilman, where somebody like was exchanging a gator with somebody and it like escaped and went into the river. And so they're like, oh, I guess we're just gonna pretend like that didn't happen. And so people were seeing this alligator in the Kiski River for like months. And they eventually catch it. But anyway, and then another one got out. So another alligator escaped. You would think they would have a control on these things, but then they thought the way to solve this was to pass an alligator ban. But they ultimately didn't, and actually they arrested the guy who owned he owned like 15 alligators in Kiski Township, and they arrested him. And you know, he lives by himself. The alligators are inside. It's getting cold. What do you think's gonna happen if they have nobody to like take care of them and like turn up the heat? They're gonna escape. So they arrested this guy. He's in jail. His alligators escape. Someone's coming home at night, and there's an alligator sitting on their front porch because it's getting the heat from their door. So this government involvement in this town just like spiraled out of control, and there's alligators running around in rural Pennsylvania. It's crazy. But yeah, the puppy mill thing reminded me that I had to bring that up.
I actually do need to make a correction. We did not ban puppy mills. We banned the retail sale of puppies. And so we don't have any pet stores, and we don't have any puppy mills. We didn't actually ban puppy mills, but just the selling of dogs in our borough.
That's insane. alligator ban in Western Pennsylvania. My God, what a time to be alive. So in 2025, there's quite a few offices that are up this year, ranging from mayor, council, supervisor, school board, auditor, so on and so forth. How do I know what office is right for me and if I'd be a good candidate for it? And this is one of the most common questions that I hear from candidate recruits.
I'd say the best way is go to meetings. Go to various meetings. Go to your local council meetings, go to school board meetings, whatever else you think you might want to be involved in. See what goes on, and see what you're passionate about. You know, pretty early on, I don't know if Rasso's still here, but he and I went to a school board meeting, and the topic was, this is maybe 2022-ish, and it was like, should we still be masking the kids? Should masks be mandatory? And it got pretty heated, and it was obvious that the school board had made up their decision before the people even showed up. So even though overwhelmingly the people were like, this is dumb, we shouldn't be wearing masks, they still said, we're gonna mask them up. And I remember sitting there thinking, if there was somebody, you know, that was really passionate about it, this would be a great place for them to be. You know, they could really make a difference. So going to meetings is probably the biggest one. Let's see, what else did I put in? Yeah, that's about it. That's all I got.
So for context, just as an aside that you mentioned that school board meeting, and this is for Seneca Valley School Board, which is right here in Cranberry. It is the only school in Butler County to renew or approve of the mandates. Every single one of them dropped it after like 2 weeks. This was the one in Butler County that was like, we're just gonna keep it. And to say that it was, I guess people got a little excited is an understatement. The live stream of this is on YouTube, and it is one of the most insane things I've ever seen in my life. So it was like an arena event. But
yeah, it was like my spidey senses started tingling, and I got out of there because I'm like, this is gonna be bad.
Yeah, because you can feel from the crowd like this is gonna get violent very quickly. So that was just as an aside, but go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, so you kind of alluded to it, that they have their mind made up before they get there, and you know, maybe they hang out at the bar beforehand, and they buy the right person drinks, and they decide what's going to happen, and they go into the meeting. Of course, three of them can't meet up at the same time because that's a violation of the Sunshine Act. But you know, they call each other. Well, one person calls the other, then the other person calls the other. It doesn't stop anything. They agree to what they're going to do beforehand. So your effectiveness is going to be limited by that, because a lot of the laundry is being done beforehand. So, but yeah, just keep people accountable. Now, how do you decide what to run for? If you want to privatize the roads, don't run for school board. So, I mean, like, you know, if you want to have a lot more latitude in what you can do council and township supervisors, borough council, because you do have control over most things. School board, you're probably going to feel much more compelled to cave, and that you can't just axe the whole system. Like, it just wouldn't necessarily be doable. But yeah, like, if you have a passion for education, you have a passion for improving like education by introducing competition and so on. Yeah, go for school board. If you want to like deal with the small issues, go attack zoning, attack contracting with trash and police. Go for borough, township, or supervisor or council.
Another thing you have to do is you have to take a look at your own life too. These are not the kind of paying jobs that you're going to quit your job and do this. This is not like serving in the State House. It's not like being in Congress. If you do get paid anything, you're talking not even going out to dinner money. And is your job, what's it going to allow you to do? Is it going to allow you to have the time to go to borough council meetings if you happen to have a second shift job? So start small. Start at something that's along lines of constable, auditor. I guarantee you, an auditor is not going to take up too much of your time. Auditors usually meet once a year. You know, and if you feel ready, you then can move up to something like supervisor. You're not going to change the world. One thing you got to get used to, I'm going to tell you, Libertarians can win at the local level. We're proof of that. but you are going to be alone. You're not gonna be on a borough council right away where you have 4 other Libertarians saying, hey, great to have you here. It's not gonna be like that. You're gonna be the lone one there. And 1, it's a lot of responsibility, but 2, it is also an uphill battle every day that you go in. Okay, you are definitely in alien territory when you go to a borough council meeting or a township supervisor's meeting. You know, so take a look at what you're up to, and as you progress, then you can move up. I always get a kick when I hear about people talking about Board of Ed. I'm like, to me, why would anybody want to be one of 9 when you can be one of 3? To me, it's like going into purgatory voluntarily. Why would anybody want to be one of 9 when you can be one of 3? School board, it takes a certain kind of mentality, but it is nothing wrong with serving on a borough council or serving as a township supervisor and then going to school board. Because at that point, you've built your alliances, you've built your skills, and you can handle being one of 9.
You guys are getting paid? I didn't know that was on the table, but yeah, definitely go to meetings, see what you're into, if you know, being on your local council or school board. But school board specifically, that one's going to be a fight of, I think in Central Bucks School District, there have been literal fistfights over the past year, 2 or 3 years maybe. It's been a mess for a while. So there is a different danger profile you want to look into as well, because when you're dealing with people's kids, they get upset.
So I've heard all of this, all the stories you guys told, and after everything and seeing, you know, what's going on in my local community, you know, I'm sold. I want to run for local office. What do I do now? How do I get on the ballot? What sort of inroads can I make while running? And can my bid still be a success even if I don't win?
I'm going to start with the last point. Can my bid still be a success even if I don't win? I just saw John Thomas walk in, and one of the greatest things I've ever seen was John Thomas's debate for whichever school board it was.
Armstrong School Board.
Yeah, and John basically wiped the floor with the opponent. It was fantastic to watch. I believe to the point where they changed the rules and said no applause going forward. So absolutely, even if you don't win, you can still spread the message, and a lot of people in that room that night got the message, that's for sure. And what were the other parts of the question?
How do I get on the ballot, and what inroads can I make while running?
Okay, to get on the ballot, I may not be the best person to answer this question because I got Molten maneuvered, but from what I know, if you're interested, go to your local affiliate, talk to them. Don't be a criminal, we learned that one.
True story.
You know, and once you introduce yourself to your local affiliate, somebody there is definitely going to help you out that knows more. But it's basically do a petition, which is get the signatures you need, do all your paperwork, get it certified, whatever the term is, on time, get it in there, and get on the ballot is the big one. Get on the ballot. Don't try and do it right in if you don't have to.
Unless you're Alex and you're a lunatic
Unless
and you
you're
can actually get elected. I still can't believe you did that.
Yeah, no one really can.
So the question is, like, how do you run, and even if you don't win, how can you be effective? So, I mean, you can be a pain in the ass without being on the council. And even now, like, when I'm in town, I still go to the council meetings sometimes. I'm sure, like, their blood pressure spikes when I walk through the door. And I'm like, I wouldn't doubt it. But, you know, you gotta go and you stir stuff up. And I don't want things to get done, unlike everyone else there. And once you have that reputation, it's like, all right, well, this guy's gonna be a problem, he's gonna be a pain, and they come to terms real quickly with, okay, things are not gonna get done this meeting, I guess, because he just showed up randomly after being gone for 3 months. So, I mean, there's ways, you gotta like develop that, work that, and like learn like the norms and conventions at your council. So some of them are very loose, like, oh, we don't have time limits, and people just talk, and it's like, well, that can be exploited. Yeah, so if they're trying to consider something like a rent ordinance, they're considering a rent ordinance recently, and I just didn't shut up. And eventually when they just decided to kick it off to the next meeting. Oh, mission accomplished. So yeah, exploit those rules. They're gonna hate you, but I mean, what would you, if they like you, that you're not doing your job right. I mean, even then, like, you can still, as I said, record the meetings, show up, tell people what's going on. That's how you can still be effective. And even if you don't win, so Drew, he ran with me for council, and it was a write-in, he lost by 2 votes. So we almost had 2 people on the council, but Drew continued to show up, and you served on some boards that never met, so yeah. So you got placements. So yeah, there's ways. Those are some ways you can be effective even if you don't win. And yeah.
And now that you mentioned Drew running, it just reminded me, and I think it should be applauded. You ran for council. I believe there were 3 seats up.
Yeah, there were 2 Republicans I ran against. I came in first.
You came in first place. You
Wow.
can beat the duopoly, folks.
It also doesn't help that they just have like a pitiful sign they set up for themselves.
I think the most important part, what you're talking about now, if you want to run, is you need to get moving right after convention. Number one, you want to discuss this with your affiliate, because they're going to be giving you the backing. They're going to be, we do endorsements in this state. We have minor party status. So your local affiliate actually has some say as to whether or not you can run, at least as a Libertarian. And the other aspect is the duopoly has 3 weeks to get their signatures for their petitions for whatever office they're running for. You have 5 months. That puts you at a very big disadvantage, because if you have to get 10 signatures in 5 months, guess what you're doing every weekend? You're watching television. You're figuring, I got 5 months. And the next thing you know, it's the end of July, and you're scrambling around trying to figure out how you're gonna get on the ballot. Don't wait. Do not wait. I guarantee you, if you wait, you get past the end of March, it's like you're dead. You just waited too long, because the end of March turns into the end of April, turns into the end of May, and before you know it, you've missed it. We saw it in Berks County. We've done dozens of endorsements for candidates who never made it on the ballot because they didn't bother to take 1 step toward knocking on a door. Get started now. Hey, if you need 20 signatures to run for an office and you get 50 by the end of March, that's great, because usually people who sign your petition are gonna vote for you. And if you need 350 votes to win, get 350 signatures on your petition. Local office, the footing is equal. You can't beat the Republicans and Democrats running for president because we don't got enough money. You can't beat them at their own game. But when you're talking local office, that's different. Now it's a question of how many hands can you shake, how many signatures can you get, how many people can you talk to. You get in their living room, and now you've got your 30-second commercial. So don't wait, because right after this weekend, that's when you can start circulating your petitions.
Yeah, I would reiterate on that of, go to your Board of Elections and get the paperwork, and it explains a lot of the procedure, the dates of when you need to have things done by, but getting started earlier rather than later. Last summer, we had a heat wave for like 3 months of 100-degree days. That's not the most fun to be out knocking on doors in. And so if you can do that in the spring, you can save yourself a lot of trouble in agita. And also a lot of trouble can be saved if you can get your name on the ballot instead of trying to have people write it in. If you do a write-in campaign, hand out pens with your name on it. That really helps. But even if you don't win, you're still out talking with people, you're networking with your community, and you're advancing the narrative of liberty in people's minds where a lot of times they have not been exposed to that. So you absolutely can win that way, even if you don't win your election.